So this is the setup to drill the holes in the motor end bell to bolt the adapter on. The bolts are coming through from this side. I've centered up using my Sean 3D taster and then programmed in a PCD of 76mm, which comes as close to this wall as I can without running into the inside corner radius. And I'm going to put in 8 holes for M6 cap heads. You can see that there's actually a rib pattern in here. There are 8 ribs, and I've just eyeballed a position in between the 2 ribs. I'm not actually going to film me just drilling some holes. This is really, I'm just showing the setup, and then we'll see everything bolting together. So I've got the motor with its adapter cum spacer and the spare G-Wiz gearbox sitting on top, and I've set the orientation between the two. So this should be the vertical axis of the gearbox, and I've set the junction box so this faces vertical too, as near as I can get it by eye, and that should allow the cables to come out the top of this box, which I've rotated 90 degrees compared to how it was in the Selectria, and then there should be enough room to route them under the back of the G-Wiz. So I'm just set up now to use a transfer punch to mark the position of the 3 pairs of 2 holes that bolt the gearbox to the motor. As you can see, I've got the motor mocked up onto the axle, and I'm having a rethink about the orientation of the motor, partly through looking at one of my own G-Wizes and in discussions with Richard. My original plan was to have the terminal box on the front here, but there doesn't appear to be enough clearance to the tub, I guess you'd call it, what's effectively the rear of the rear footwell, if it has a rear footwell, if you believe that there are seats in the back. Really it's a 2-seater. It's not even a 2+2 unless the +2 are very small. So I'm going back to the idea of having the terminal box on the back of the motor and tilted down as close to the axle as is practical. And the reason I was wanting to have it on the other side is because of the cable exit route. This is the original holes in the box, and when they were in the Selectria, the box would have been in this orientation, and the wires could exit in this direction, though I've seen Selectrias also built with the wires exiting at 90 degrees. Now there's probably just enough room to bring the cables up over the gearbox. They can't come vertical very easily because of the internal wiring. If I can get the junction box off again. So with the box pointing towards me, it's just possible to sneak one cable out here, and then there's plenty of room for the other 2 to come down. To exit in the opposite direction, whilst there's room to sneak a cable in this little path, the opposite path, this cable's in the way. These are quite stiff. So I think they can probably come out in this direction, which is the original direction. The other solution, which is a little bit more work, but not too bad, is to have the box oriented like this, put in some blanking plates and build a new lid for this box that allows the cables to exit at about a 45-degree angle to the terminals and go off to wherever they're needed. So I'm going to pull this all apart. I'm going to put the end back on the motor a little bit more securely than it is now. Put some screws in back on the terminal box, and then set the angle of this adapter again with this adapter box as close to the axle as is practical, with a little bit of clearance. And then I'll mark the hole positions again, and then we'll get those drilled and tapped. So I've now got the motor fully mounted onto the axle, and the junction box is sitting about 6mm above the axle. So, you know, the motor is the tallest part of the setup. It's a little bit fatter than original, but we should be okay. And I've got the A-frame bolted back onto the axle because, as suspected, I had to cut the motor support frame out. You can see we've got a threaded boss here on the motor that I can pick up on, make a little bracket, give the motor a little bit more support. And then this bar will go back in about 25mm below where it did before. And I've made up some, cut some pieces of tubing to build gussets to make a neat transition. So as far as getting the motor onto the axle, this job is complete.